Hi, everyone. My name is Stacey Rusterholtz, and I'm the Assistant Director for Alumni Relations at Otterbein. Sorry that we can't be together in person to talk through this workshop today, but did wanted to sort of do as modified a workshop online as we could. Normally, this is really engaging and interactive workshop, but today I'm sort of going to walk you through at least some of the material and give you some things to think about that hopefully you can kind of engage in a discussion, maybe with a friend or a family member or something like that in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the name of this workshop is Dare to be Theoretical, Principles of Leadership. So this is one of the foundational workshops of the Dare to Be workshop series for leadership. And it's really just focused on sort of that foundational, what is leadership? Where does that idea come from? Like, how do you define it? Things like that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so normally we start off with an activity, just sort of thinking about who is your leadership role model. So take a few minutes for yourself now and think about when you think about what a good leader is, what defines leadership for you, who immediately comes to mind? Is it a teacher you used to work with, a coach, a family member? Just think through that for a few minutes and then write down some things that what about them makes them your role model? Think about what those things are. So oftentimes in this discussion, things come out like, a coach that was really important to me, or a professor that really had a big impact on me, or my parent or grandparent or something like that. And there's a lot of different ideas that come up with of what makes them a good role model to you. They have high integrity, they're really caring, they're hardworking, they are a good listener, a variety of different things that folks share about what a good leader is to them. And that looks different to everyone, and there's no right or wrong here. This is supposed to be a discussion. So keep this person in the back of your brain as we go through, and as we're talking about different theories, think about which one of these theories do I really see this person fitting into best in terms of leadership. Right, so this is another activity that you're going to kind of have to do on your own, or think about on your own, or maybe just engage in a discussion with a family member. So this activity, traditionally, I would have folks stand in the middle of the room, and one side of the room is "this is not leadership," and the other side of the room is "this is leadership." And then I read a series of phrases and I ask them to choose one side or another, and then we engage in a discussion about sort of why you chose that side, because folks often have differing opinions. So here's just a couple that maybe you can engage in a discussion with. Teaching a class, is that leadership or not leadership? Volunteering to tutor elementary school children, leadership or not leadership? Voting in an election, leadership or not leadership? Writing a letter to the editor of a newspaper about an issue you care about, leadership or not leadership? So think through those ideas and where you would be standing. Is this leadership? Is this not leadership? And try not to stand somewhere in the middle because it's supposed to be a challenging discussion. It's supposed to get you to think about really what is leadership. So then let's have a little discussion about what leadership is and is it definable. So usually in that previous activity, a lot of different things come up. Where people are talking about certain traits that leaders have, or it's really more about leading other people, towards a shared goal, common vision, something like that. So there's a lot of different things that come up. And what is leadership and is it definable is a question we often talk about. It's really difficult to think about having a particular definition. I will share sort of what Otterbein's philosophy is on leadership, but of course everyone sort of has their own idea. And does leadership have to be a position? So this is often a discussion about the difference between a leader and leadership. So somebody can be a leader and have a position or a title, for example, a teacher or a president of an organization or a coach, but they might not be exhibiting good leadership skills. So they have that title, but they're not necessarily portraying what you would call good leadership skills. So that's a really interesting discussion, something I like to think a lot about. Just because someone's elected to a position or appointed to a position as a leader doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skills to be to lead that group in the best way possible. That doesn't mean that they can't learn them. Leadership is definitely learnable, something that you can grow in, but that might not be sort of your strong suit at the time. Another thing, does the concept of leadership change depending on you're acting alone or in a group? So if you do something on an individual level, like, if you participate in a protest or a march, or versus you organize the march to get other people together. Does that have a different idea for you of what leadership is? So generally, the way that leadership is thought about at Otterbein is it's somebody who is leading a group of people towards a common goal or purpose for positive change. So that's the general idea, although everyone has a slightly different definition. The idea is leadership is inspiring other people towards that common goal and idea of making things better. So we are going to sort of dive into what the different leadership theories are. So we just wanted to start by talking about leadership in general, trying to get you just to think, because it's not something you think about often. And we're going to start out with a video here first, if it works.
Do you know what makes a leader successful? It's hard to put your finger on just what it is that the best leaders have, which less effective ones don't. There are 4 core groups of theories about the foundations of good leadership. When you understand them, you can adapt them for your own circumstances. The first of these are the trait theories. They explore the characteristics a good leader has. For instance, do you need integrity, empathy, assertiveness, or all 3? They examine which traits are most desirable and useful when you're in a leadership role. The next group of theories look at behavior. What do the best leaders do? For instance, do they bark instructions, or do they involve their team in decisions? Understanding the different approaches can help you decide how to behave as a leader. The third group of theories looks at how situations influence leadership. For instance, what leadership style should you use when you're in a crisis situation and need to make a quick decision? Or on a regular day, is it better to be involved or take a hands-off approach with your team? The last group of theories explores power and influence and how these elements affect leadership. All leaders have a certain amount of power, but how you use it says a lot about what kind of leader you are. To learn more about the core theories of leadership, read the article that accompanies this video.
Okay, so hopefully that was helpful in just giving a very brief overview of what different leadership theories are, and we're going to go into each of those and a couple others actually right now. So we're going to start sort of way back in time a little bit. So in the mid-1800s to early 1900s, I realize it's a large period of time, but this is when the idea about leadership, people really actually started to think about it. So this was the great man theory era. Essentially, it was assumed that you're born with leadership. You either have it or you don't have it. It's not something you can get better at. It's not something that you can gain. It's really just, it's more of a male quality. Folks who are male tend to be more seen as a leader. You just kind of have that natural ability of power and influence, and sort of seen as heroic. So yeah, it's just you're born with it. You either have it, you don't have it. So that's not necessarily a very common theory today, but it is something that folks still might think about a little bit. Not everybody believes that leadership can be learned, but that is definitely this philosophy of most folks, that it can be learned, and especially here at Otterbein. So, The next theory that kind of started to emerge after that was the trait theory. And this is something that actually still has quite a relevant role in today. Folks think about certain traits or qualities that leaders have. So the assumptions here are that people can inherit certain qualities or traits that make them better leaders. When you're thinking about this, thinking about your personality, your ability to interact with other people, your physical or intellectual traits that sort of differentiate you between leaders and non-leaders. So again, it sort of has that same piece as the great man, that you either possess the natural ability to lead or you don't. But it's more aligned in terms of what are those specific traits and qualities, and they kind of have come up with a list. And these are qualities that folks think a lot about now for leadership, although they believe that these are things you can still work on and get better at. So here's some of the traits or qualities that people associate with leadership: physical vitality, stamina, intelligence, eagerness to accept responsibility, being competent, motivating others, trustworthiness, self-confidence. You can read the rest, but these are certain behaviors or characteristics that folks believe you are, in this time at least, believe that you're kind of born with, that help make you a better leader. The next, this is kind of a big shift here into behavioral theory. So this is where that big aha moment is. Okay, it's not just something you're born with, it's something you can learn, something you can get better at, because you can change your behaviors to become a better leader. So during this time period, it sort of came about actually because folks had done studies trying to figure out, okay, what are these universal traits that make somebody a better leader? And they were having a hard time identifying them. So that's when this idea came out that, okay, they can learn this. You're not just born with it. And it's based on definable and learnable behavior rather than just traits that you're born with or not. So this is a big shift here. The next is participatory theory. That is really hard to say. And the idea here is that your involvement in decision-making improves understanding. So people are more committed when they're involved in the process. So the idea is that this is where that sort of idea comes, leading other people. It's not just an individual thing that you have these traits or these qualities, but your behavior in leading other people and getting other people on your side and on board towards a common goal. That's when this really emerges. So that kind of definition that we're working off of working with people to move them towards a common goal, that's making things better. This is really important in that. So it's less about the one person, it's more about the person getting other people on board to make things better. So situational leadership is really interesting. I find it really fascinating because I've seen it play out in different ways, and I think others have as well. So the idea here is that leaders act differently depending on the situation. So in a crisis situation, for example, you need a different kind of leadership than you might need during a really strong period for a company, or a student organization that's at the very beginning phases might really need somebody who has certain qualities as opposed to an organization that's been well-functioning machine for years. So, and that different leadership behaviors are required for different situations, and there's not one best style for all situations. So they kind of put this into this cool fun chart. So you can see the different axes are directive behavior and supportive behavior. So there's sort of three quadrants. So the first one, I'm going to say the first one, is the S4, the lower left-hand corner. So this is really where low support is needed and low directive behavior. So really in this phase, the leadership style that's most effective is delegating. So people don't really need a lot, and they just sort of need to know what to do and they'll do it. Next one, S3, supporting. So high supportive behavior and low directive behavior. So try and think about a situation where you really might need somebody who's just a really supportive person. People don't necessarily need to know what to do, but they really need to be supported. Trying to think of a situation like that. So maybe a company that's been, working really well for a while, but maybe there's something challenging going on in the company. Personally, people can really still do their job, but they really need a highly supportive person to help them think through those different things. Next one, coaching. So high directive and high supportive behavior. So this is something where folks, they need a lot. They need a lot of support and they need a lot of direction. So maybe this is that sort of new organization or a company in crisis. They really need to know what to do and they really need to be supported in that process. And then the final one, high directive and low supportive. So this maybe is even more so of a crisis scenario where people really, you got to take action. We got to get things done, and then we'll sort of think about the supporting later. So I probably didn't do the best job of explaining that, but kind of get the idea there. The idea that different situations require different kinds of leadership. So the next one is power and influence theory. So as in the video talked about, power does play a part in leadership, but the way that we want to think about it is, it's transformational rather than transactional. So transactional is, merely an exchange of things between leaders and followers. It's much more that management piece, that businessy kind of thing. It's impersonal and it limits the focus on change rather than transformational, which is when a leader can use their power and influence to really change the culture and the vision and get folks to innovate because they're inspiring to other people. And it really causes a transformation within the people and within the company rather than just transactional. It's not just, okay, let's get this done. It's like, okay, let's get everybody on board. Let's get everybody's ideas. Let's get creative. And then, really empowering people to kind of be leaders themselves. And then you really see a transformation within both the people and the company. There's 5 different types of powers. I remember learning about these in psychology class. I thought they were really interesting. So legitimate power being, this is a formal position, so a title like we talked about. You're the president, you're the teacher, you're the coach. You have legitimate power because you have a formal position. Coercive power, so this is the power to punish. So, coercive power could look like, I don't know, a family member, has the ability to take away your TV privileges because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Reward power, you can give things out. So a teacher might give out positive grades or extra credit or something like that. Expert power, knowledge or skill. So somebody who, because they're just really knowledgeable about a particular area, they have sort of power and influence over you because they are an expert at that. And then referent power is more based on that personality. So they kind of have that it factor, that charismatic leadership that really gets people excited. All right, the next one is really different way of thinking about leadership. So it's kind of upside down leadership. You can see the little graphic on the right. So when you actually Google leadership and look at the images, a lot of what you see is one person standing in front of everybody else or pointing, in one direction. That person is like higher than the rest. But what's really different about servant leadership is it's kind of flipped. The idea is that the leader is at the bottom and they are lifting up their followers. So they are not in front of everybody else. They are a support network that's holding everybody else up, sort of transcending their own interest to serve others and help them grow. So yeah, it's really about caring about followers and helping your followers be leaders. And this is one of my favorite parts. There can be no discussion of leadership without talking about followership. If we're talking about leadership as being getting other people excited and on board and moving towards a common goal, you have to have those other people and make them leaders in their own right. So this is a fun little video. It's kind of different, so I hope you enjoy.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. he publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. See, it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
All right, well, that is I've always really liked that video. I think it does a really great job of illustrating in a fun way followership. So the idea that, yes, there was this one person, this leader who went out and started something, but until that first person came, and until they really nurtured that person and accepted them as an equal and got them excited about what they were doing, there wasn't much of a movement. It was just one person by themselves. So that importance of nurturing their first few followers, really investing in them. There's a couple more here we're going to talk through. I'm not going to talk about these in detail because some of them are somewhat self-explanatory, but a newer theory, the idea of authentic leadership. So it's just like it sounds like. So authenticity being, you are yourself and you're leading with your own values. You're the same person that you are in your leadership role as you are in the rest of your life. So folks can really feel when you're being authentic and they trust you. And so that's a really great way for people to want to follow you and want to, lead alongside you, is that they know that you're being authentic and you're self-aware and you're invested and you care about what you're doing. Social change model. So a lot of leadership programs, including the Van Sant program, are kind of based around this idea of social change. So the idea in this is that there's sort of 3 different areas, I guess you could say, that help work towards positive social change. So there's 7 C's: consciousness of self, congruence, commitment, collaboration, common purpose, controversy with civility, and citizenship. So the idea is that students learn and grow through each of these areas. Some are individual values, some are group values, some are societal values, community values, but that together, it's a process of leadership, and they're all constantly working together back and forth, and folks are, growing in these areas, but their goal in growing is that they are going to become a leader for positive change within their institution, within their community. This is a pretty complex process, and I really don't have the time to sort of walk through all of it. But the idea is that, if you can understand yourself and your ideas and your values, then you can better understand how to work with other people who are different from you. And then if you have both of those things together, you can work to make change within your community, because you have to know yourself to work with other people, and you have to know how to lead and work with other people in order to make change. So it's really kind of this integral process of working together. And leadership is a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. So just go ahead and take a moment to think about which of these leadership theories resonates the most with you and why. Why do you like it? Why does it stick with you? And then think back to that leadership role model from the beginning, the person you thought about when we first talked about leadership, who came to mind. Which of these theories, or do you sort of see them falling into? So it's a great way to kind of reflect on them, reflect on what you've learned from them, and think about what style they fit into best. So that's really the end of my session today. I hope you learned something from it, sort of where leadership came from, the idea of it, how it's evolved over time. Again, there's no right or wrong here, but it's really important for you to start thinking about leadership for yourself as you're leading student organizations, as you go out into companies and nonprofits and help lead them, making sure you understand what leadership means to you, understanding yourself so that you can lead authentically from who you are as a person. So I hope this was helpful today. I'm happy to chat if you have any more questions. It's Stacey Rusterholz. I work in Alumni Relations. It's SRUSTERHOLZ at otterbein.edu. I look forward to hearing from you, and good luck with the rest of your semester.